early can you think back?
I mean, the first photo proof is age 3. I played before that, I must have. I mean, the big ones in my early childhood were Doom, Duke Nukem, Wolfenstein. The big FPS games, those always hooked me the most. I also played King's Quest. It was like King's Quest 7, or higher, or 3, I don't know, one of some number. As well as Spelling Blizzard. That was a good one. A game called Spelling Blizzard. It wasn't really about spelling, oddly enough, as far as I remember. It was like, yeah, it was a top-down puzzle-solving game. And I guess there were letters in it. It's kind of blurry, but I remember playing that at a very young age. Yeah, a lot of demos. I had a lot of like demo discs that I played. So it's just like little chunks of games here and there. I just always had a pretty decent PC in my house. My dad was just, it's not like that he was into computers as much as he was tech savvy enough to always have a pretty good machine. So kind of growing up, I always had access to it. My sister and I used to play on the computer together. So she's about 4 years older than me, so she would help me out with things. And like that's the first photo proof. It would be is her pointing at something on the screen and me playing. I'm just like this little kid. So she kind of grew up watching me playing games as I got better and I no longer needed help. She just kind of became an observer. And so all the way up to she used to love watching me play Mass Effect. That's the final kind of series of games before I went and lived on my own and we all moved around. So pretty much my whole life she watched me play a lot of video games.
So in a way she was your first viewer.
Yeah, in a way. No, definitely, yeah. Oh, certainly. I mean, well, she would always vote on what choices to make, right? And I would usually, I would always have the last call, right? There's times where she had influence and I'd be like, I told you I shouldn't have said that, right? And so I just could not be Paragon for Mass Effect, right? So there's the occasional time I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna be mean here. And I was like, I shouldn't have done that. Like that was like, I remember there was specifically one choice I made in Mass Effect, I can't remember which Mass Effect, where there was like this huge mission I was going on and it was kind of like a final decision. I didn't realize it was that important of like, it was like to shoot a guy or not. And like I went for the Renegade option and it was just like I killed this dude and like blew up the entire facility and like yelled at my teammate and I was like wow, a lot of dominoes fell from that moment. And from that moment on, I just kept being like the protagonist, like the really nice guy. But yeah, I think Mass Effect is a perfect example of a game that is just very viewer friendly. You have getting between missions certainly, but you certainly have a watchable movie experience and the dialogue, which is just there's a lot of dialogue, it's a lot of cut scenes, and that just made it a lot more fun for someone who doesn't necessarily game. We both live our own lives now, and she lives close to me. It's like I still see her often, but it's not really the opportunities to game as much. As much as she says it's funny how people underestimate how much she knows about video games to a pretty great extent just from being in my proximity and watching me play every game ever. And so she'll say her guy friends will say something and just like assume she has no idea what they're talking about, and she'll just come out and know potentially more than them, and everyone will be surprised. That happens pretty frequently. Oof. Honestly, it's probably Doom. Honestly, probably like the original Doom. Yeah. I mean, it depends what beating is, but I think at least beating that first chapter where you get to that last level and the 2 Hell Knights and you kill those guys and you're in hell and there's text and stuff, and if that's considered beating, that's definitely my first real beating memory. Because I was such a young age, I cheated. In almost every game I played. I would put on God mode. I got really good at memorizing cheat codes, IDDQD for Doom. So that's the God mode code. I was in. I never thought it's funny because at some point I played Doom again, not too long ago, in the past 5-10 years. And I was like, wow, this is harder than I remember. And I realized, it's because I would no clip. I would God mode. I would just kind of cheat my way through the levels and just kind of have fun with it because I was age of 4. I don't know how many 4-year-olds are really figuring out their way to master Doom, right? So I imagine I died really early and just figured out God mode and got through that.
You beat Doom at 4 years old?
Yep.
How were you even allowed to play Doom at 4 years old?
My parents just didn't care. They just, there's multiple cases. So I also played Duke Nukem, which I would argue is much worse than Doom. There's nudity, there's language, there's voice acting. My dad would always say, okay, you can play this, but if you just hear anything, you don't know what it means, ask me, and you say it. So I would repeat swear words to my dad and be like, no, just don't say that. You can't like, I didn't comprehend much of the words, the things I was seeing as much as it was just another Doom, right? It was another, I'm trying to complete some puzzle. So certainly my first online multiplayer would be Quake, the original Quake. I remember, it was dial-up. Everyone remembers the sounds of dial-up, right? That's long gone now. But I hopped into a lobby. I remember I don't know how it all came about as much as it was. It's funny because I remember exactly where I was. I remember the layout of the house. For some reason, there's just like this bubble of memory specifically tied to this area of my first online experience. And it was, so Quake 1, I don't know what, I'd probably call myself Dan or something. Like I can't imagine I had anything special to call myself. And I remember hopping on. I remember exactly the arena. Like I remember the map I played on. I remember what it was like. I can't tell you how I did. I probably got destroyed. But I do remember being, it was something like 6 a.m. For whatever, I couldn't sleep. I was so excited because it was just like a plan. It's like, tomorrow I'm gonna play online. It was a plan my night. Like, we'll wake up and we'll set that up. And I remember I couldn't sleep and I woke up and it was super early because I woke my dad. I'm like, I want to go play. We just said, I want to play Quake online. It's gonna be amazing. And I remember there was no one online. Like it was me and one other person in any lobby that you could find online. And it was just the experience of being in a game with another person. It was like a real human being. And I can remember. I remember the map specifically. I can't remember how the game went down, but I do remember playing that person, and I remember seeing, as the world started lighting up and seeing more and more and more players come on and more servers fill up and more players join me, and it was a pretty crazy experience. That was crazy. Yeah, it was iconic. It was the reason I remember. Again, it wasn't just a memory of the moment of I did that. I remember the map. I remember kind of like my feeling. I remember the area. Like I remember, oddly enough, I remember the direction I was facing specifically, like as a person. I remember specifically where I was in that room. There was something about that. It's if it's almost just there's this blur beyond that, but it's just this clarity in that specific room where I was playing my first online match. So I want to say 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe it was my first stream, like live stream. And yeah, it's oddly enough, it's kind of blurry. I think that might just be the nature of streaming, and maybe the nature specifically of me coming from more of a content creation angle and thinking of it as a side thing and already having an existing audience, where it wasn't like, I'm waiting for that first viewer to come in as much as I was already established. I had the fortune of being able to be, I think my first stream I was partnered on Twitch. So I don't think as far as I remember, I never streamed without having that subscriber button. Which is very different today. It's a lot harder to get that to happen. Just email someone, right? And so, I've always been very grateful to have people watching and have that existing audience. So it's, I think it's kind of hard to specifically remember how that all went down. Oddly enough, it's very much tied to real life experiences, to real life. It doesn't apply to everybody, but just meeting people, knowing people. Something I've always loved doing is, I'm a people watcher. Like I like people, and it's funny how the more you force yourself to go out to kind of push yourself to experiences that might be uncomfortable, almost trains you to be better at things like this. Of just like, even if it's just a name behind a window, right? It's still interacting as though I would in real life for the most part, right? Like there's a little differences here and there, but I don't think I would necessarily change it, right? Like it's something that is certainly in that specific context came naturally only because I trained for it my whole life as a human, right? Like as a social person. And it's specifically Mass Effect's a good example of that, of something that comes to these choices, and my sister might kind of essentially forget she's there, right? Until it comes this decision, I go, what should I press, right? Like the clock's ticking, what should we do? And there'll be like a quick argument back and forth. And that's something that is certainly prevalent in video games as well. It's like, hey chat, what should I do? Right? Like what's the answer here? And especially more recently where you have a lot more interactive functionality in live streams where I can throw it to the chat and they can vote on things. And that's something that is almost a throwback to how I used to grow up playing video games, right? And be like, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going. Help me out here. Did you see where I went, right? And it's the same thing I would ask my sister, is the same thing I would ask the chat. There are definitely certain specific viewers who will be the ones that I, maybe have played with more, and we just had like some kind of different connection. And those are the kind of people that, and especially when they continue showing up, it definitely, they start transcending that, or they start becoming real life friends, and that's something that's also changing. Where in the past, before I would stream, that would more come from different situations of just being people in Halo 2, right, that I ran into randomly, and we had a good time, and we teamed up and we talked, and those people became friends. And that's that whole idea is shifting for a lot of people, right? It's no longer like, while that still happens to people, certainly running into someone in matchmaking, there's a lot more a content creation element to it and social media element to it of this is someone I've run into a lot, and that a new connection is formed that way. Definitely. It's actually a really good question, because I think a long time ago, many years ago,